ground rules for the candidate. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for opening remarks and 60 seconds for closing remarks at the conclusion of the program. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to give his response to each question posed. When there's 25 seconds remaining, the candidate will be given a yellow flag warning. When his time runs out, he will receive a red flag warning. Each candidate will get an opportunity to answer each question. There will be no additional or extra time allotted for rebuttals so that we may answer as many questions as possible. We ask that the candidates do not interrupt while the other is speaking. I, as the moderator, have the ability to intervene during an answer if I believe the candidate is not responding or responsive to the question. And I may ask for clarification on a statement or comment if necessary. If I perceive that it is necessary, I may allocate additional time to each candidate to answer a specific follow-up question. We are asking for no props or visual aids. I ask that everyone remain in their seats during the duration of the forum. The candidates may use notes in order to assist their recitation of the responses. I ask that everyone remain civil, both our candidates to each other as well as our observers. And I believe that we are asking that no surrogates be allowed to answer questions. Regarding the audience participants, we are asking that you all submit questions on written note cards, and they will be collected before the conclusion of the debate. We ask that questions be submitted anonymously, and they will be picked up at the end of the aisle, and they will be read by me as the moderator. I ask for no outbursts or cheering. I ask for no visible signs or campaign materials. I ask that you silence your cellular devices. At the conclusion of the forum, if there is an individual that has a question that was not asked or you can seek further clarification, we will be having an informal discussion with the candidates thereafter. Thank you. If I may begin first with Mr. Ray Morrogh. He is the current Commonwealth's attorney for Fairfax County to provide your opening remarks.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thanks everyone for coming out on this beautiful day to discuss issues that are really critical to our community safety and our justice system. Again, I'm Ray Morrogh. I've had the privilege of being in public service for more than half my life. I started out as an assistant Commonwealth attorney in 1983 after leaving criminal defense work, and I also worked for the mentally ill, which I'll get to later. And then in 1988, I was appointed to be Chief Deputy Commonwealth Attorney, and in 2007, when my predecessor retired due to advancing age, I won my first election, and I've been here ever since, 12 years, I guess, elected. It's been an honor and a privilege to be of service to everyone here and everyone in this community. I've worked very hard for you, 6-7 days a week. I've tried hundreds of jury trials. I've sat on the family room floor with little kids at their homes and colored with them on Saturday mornings, and then come back the next weekend on child sex cases to try to allow the kids to warm up to me so we could go try those cases, and I went in and personally tried them. I've seen some horrific things as a prosecutor, and I think I've been an effective prosecutor. But I also want you to know that I'm a fair and progressive prosecutor. I started criminal justice reform the day I was elected by opening up discovery. Discovery is very limited in Virginia, can result in innocent people being convicted when defense attorneys aren't properly prepared. I give open file discovery and have since the day I was elected, 2007. I testified in 2002 to raise the grand larceny threshold from then $200. Back then we were trying to make it $750. They just made it $500 now. It's still too low. I worked hard to keep people out of jail Just as hard as I work to lock someone up who's a danger to the community, I work just as hard to keep people out of jail who don't belong. I've worked hard to crush the school-to-prison pipeline. I've worked with some great people. We're lucky in this county to have so many public-spirited citizens and groups. We have a veterans docket. We have a drug court. We have a mental health court. We have a diversion first program. Our jail population is the lowest it's been in decades. The juvenile detention center is the lowest it's ever been in terms of population, and almost every one of those kids is a gang member or has done a violent crime. We're working on the well-known racial disparity by creating programs like alternative accountability, so we don't bring kids even into the system. They don't walk through the doors of the juvenile court, because we don't want them to identify themselves as juvenile delinquents and later criminals. We want them to know that there are people in this system who care about them. So we get them mentors, we get them the help they need, we work with them to solve their problems. I hope to convince you by the end of this that I have been an effective, fair, and progressive prosecutor. Thank you.
If we may now hear from Mr. Steve Descano, the challenger for the Democratic primary.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hi, everybody. It is such a great pleasure to have you give me the opportunity to share with you my vision for the Office of Commonwealth's Attorney. And I'm particularly excited to do it in front of this group in this forum because it's put on by NAACP and People Power ACLU, both groups that I have worked with for years on a number of issues. I served on the NAACP's Criminal Justice Committee, on the Legal Redress Committee, and I was the NAACP representative on the county's Police Civilian Review Panel. I worked with People Power ACLU numerous times on trying to make the justice system more fair and equitable to people of all immigration statuses. And, you know, I have always have had this call to service. That's why I'm a West Point graduate, served in the U.S. Army, became a federal prosecutor, and have gotten very, very involved in our community. And I'm involved with these groups in our community because those groups represent my values. They represent our values. And values are important in this job, right? Because our Commonwealth's Attorney is the leader of our criminal justice system, and we need to make sure that our community values make it back into our criminal justice system. And the way that we do that is to make sure that we have a Commonwealth's Attorney who is active in the community, someone who goes out and reaches out to the community. You know what their values are and that they're living their values every day. Not somebody that shows up when they need to vote with an excuse as to why you've never seen their face before. Because this is a job that demands real leadership. The type of leadership that really pushes for reform. The type of leadership that brings bold solutions to hard problems. The type of leadership that doesn't shrug its shoulders and say this is the way it's always been for 35 years. The type of leadership that will be guided by our shared community values to bring real reform, not to sit back and let reform happen to them. And again, that's the type of leader that I've been throughout my public service my entire life. I learned that service as a cadet at West Point, practiced it as a U.S. Army officer, practiced it, put it into practice again as I led organizations, big and small. Practiced it as a federal prosecutor under the Obama administration, where I took on very, very complex national and international scope cases where we had victims that were mentally disabled, new immigrants, the elderly, cases that took years to build, where I supervised and oversaw teams of specialists and federal agents and other attorneys. And then, of course, I put that leadership into practice here in the county as a member of the Civilian Review Panel, making sure that everybody knew what was going on in the criminal justice system, making sure it was fair, making sure everybody knew that nobody was above the law. That's the type of leadership I plan to bring to this office, and that's the type of leadership that I plan to talk to you about today. So thank you for having me. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Descano. If I may begin with our first question, I will begin with the incumbent, Mr. Morrogh. The first question relates to accountability. The Commonwealth Attorney plays a central role in the county's criminal justice system, from deciding whether to prosecute or to seek diversionary alternative, making recommendations regarding pretrial detention, making plea offers, and sentence recommendations. Given the significant amount of discretion associated with your position, What measures have you taken or will you take in the future to ensure that the direction, policies, and values that are guiding your office are transparent to the public?
Thank you, Vanessa. You know, what we teach our new assistants on the first day when they come in for about 3 months of training before we set them loose in traffic court is that the job of the prosecutor is to do the right thing in every case for the right reasons. Everything we do is open to the public. You know, the press attends a lot of our trials. We meet with public groups. I'm on all sorts of boards and have been on countless boards where we get asked questions about what we're doing, different interest groups, victims' rights groups. Just the other day we met with a group of citizens on Child Safe, talk about our numbers, how we're doing, what sort of progress we're making on those cases. There's just a host of groups that are interested in what we do. And my office door is always open. People call me every day in my office. It's always open. I'll talk to anyone about any case and help any citizen with anything they need. And I write reports, sorry, but when there's a police shooting, I write reports voluntarily.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Descano?
Thank you. Absolutely. You know, I think that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office right now operates in a black box. Everywhere I go, people tell me that they don't know what's going on in that office. There's no data in that office. I've had multiple supervisors tell me that people don't know how to get in contact with that office. And then when they have a question, they call the supervisor and they pass it along. That's not transparency to me. And when it comes to leadership, I've heard my opponent in his kickoff video say, I don't tell my prosecutors what to do. I just tell them to do the right thing. That's not leadership, that's the advocation of leadership. What we need is we actually need somebody who's going to come in and lead that office and do it transparently, somebody who's going to invite outside organizations in to create data to see where we have racial and economic disparities in our criminal justice system. Put that information out on the website, go around talking about that information, talking about how we're going to solve it, because that's how you build transparency. Give people the data, talk about it constantly, tell you how you're going to make the problem better, and ask that that's how you be judged. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question relates to racial disparities in the criminal justice system. I will begin with Mr. Descano. Mr. Descano, in a recent poll, 70% of voters in Northern Virginia believe that the criminal justice system here in Virginia works differently for different people. Most cited racial differences or racial bias. In a 2015 study collected from the Vera Institute reveals that there are nearly 4 times as many African Americans incarcerated in the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center than Caucasian. What role, if any, do you believe a Commonwealth's attorney plays in defendant incarceration? And if elected, how would you use your office to address these racial disparities in Fairfax County?
Only a minute, huh? Well, that's a great question, because over in Virginia, we've been having a big discussion on racial injustice in this Commonwealth. And we've been having it because of a picture that punches in the face with that level of racism. But in the criminal justice system, that racism, the systemic discrimination, it's systemic, it's not blatant, it doesn't punch you in the face. We need somebody who's going to go in there and root it out. I think that's actually a big distinction between my opponent and I. The reason that I was endorsed by Terry McAuliffe is because when it came to restoration of voting rights, we all know that that was a racially discriminatory thing. It was baked into the cake when it came into being over 100 years ago. But my opponent, when asked about it, said it never occurred to me. Something I didn't think about. It was just in the job when I got my job. If you can't see racial discrimination that's so obvious in your face that way, how can you see it when it's systemic and you need to root out and search for it? That's why what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in those outside organizations to help me find it. But we also know, I already know there are areas that are racially discriminatory. Marijuana, cash bet, oh, you're giving me the 0 already. I told you, it's a tough 30-minute question.
Thank you, sir.
It's the lightning round. Thank you, Steve. Sure. Listen, anyone who doesn't think that there's racism in our society in general, not just the courts, is not watching closely. That's why my office trains on things like implicit bias, to make sure people understand that there are subtle ways, because of where you grow up and how you grow up, that you cannot appreciate what other people go through in their lives. So we do work. In fact, we're working with the Vera Institute, with the VACA, which is the prosecutors organization. We're in the process of hiring them. With respect to the Governor McAuliffe's bill, boy, that really chaps me. I have never been against voting rights. Go to Blue Virginia, you'll see LaBravia Jenkins has put a video up to talk about why those Democratic prosecutors opposed the governor. We opposed him restoring gun rights. We weren't against voting rights. When I used to have to approve all the voting rights over all these years, I've never signed off against anyone's voting rights. It's a racist thing, but voting rights shouldn't be linked to gun rights.
Thank you, Mr. Morrogh. The next question relates to immigration and will be posed first to Mr. Morrogh. In Fairfax County, 50% of immigrants charged with state crimes are transferred to Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody from the Fairfax Adult Detention Center before their state court cases are resolved. This leads to immigration officials considering unadjudicated allegations as a basis for an individual's deportation. State prosecutors have the authority and the ability to petition the court to order a defendant's return to state court. Are you willing to adopt a policy to file these petitions unilaterally in these instances?
Thank you, Vanessa. First of all, I'd have to say that our immigrant community, whether documented or undocumented, is vital to the progress that we're going to make in this country. All my grandparents were immigrants and had Irish brothers. I guess that's topical this weekend. But in any event, we care deeply about our immigrant population. We do try to rid people back who are taken from us, but I will tell you, when the feds get a hold of them, it's a black hole. And I'm not in charge of the federals, but we work with immigrants. For instance, if you recommend a jail sentence of a year, an immigrant is going to get deported. So we work with the defense bar to lower the recommendations, try to lower the sentences so that these immigrants aren't, kicked out of the country and separated from their families on minor crimes. I don't have much control over the federal authorities, but we don't report anything to the federal authorities, my office, about any immigrants. And I think immigration status has nothing to do with justice. We help victims with what we call a U status, try to keep them in this country so they can testify in their cases.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. But first, I'd like to go back to the last question because that chaps me too. And I'd invite everybody in this room to go on my Facebook page, Steve Descano for Fairfax County Commonwealth's attorney, or on my Twitter page, and take a look at the video when my opponent talked about the restoration of rights and what his answer was. It didn't have anything to do with guns.
I got that. Mr. Descano, can we focus on the immigration question?
Sure. I was willing to give up some of my minute, but that's fine. I know that I've had experience with this personally. As a federal prosecutor, I had a case down in Miami where undocumented individuals were being extorted by people outside the country because of their immigrant status. And instead of giving that case up, I fought for that case, and I actually, when the individual who was doing that came into the United States, I had federal agents go on a plane and pull him off and bring him to justice. Because all of our neighbors need to know that they get equal access to the law, equal protection of the law. Those are the values that I want to have every single one of my prosecutors bring to the fore when we talk about immigration cases.
Thank you, sir. Our next question relates to specialized treatment dockets and diversion programs, and will be first posed to Mr. Descano. Fairfax County has several specialized treatment dockets, such as drug court and veterans court. Each of those courts have restrictions on the types of charges that are eligible for participation. If elected, will you commit to expanding participation eligibility to all misdemeanors and all nonviolent felonies? Why or why not?
That's a great question, because really the crux of my candidacy is trying to keep people from falling into the criminal justice system unnecessarily. The veterans, so the short answer is yes. I talk to defense attorneys, I talk to the people who run the veterans docket, for example, and they tell me about the need to expand. And they talk about the Commonwealth's attorney's role as the gatekeeper, and how they can take more people, but because the Commonwealth's attorney right now doesn't incentivize people properly to get into the system, that there's only 12 or 13 people in that program right now. What we want to do is we're going to expand that program and get more people in it, because what we want to do is get people to get at the root cause of their crime, come out on the other side and are able to live and be productive members of society. The thing with the drug court is, that drug court is post-conviction. It's for people who have been convicted and are now on probation. That's not doing the deal. We need to expand that and try to improve that, because we need to get at people before they've created a criminal record that's going to limit their lives.
Thank you. Mr. Morrogh, same question.
Thank you so much. I'm very proud of our Veterans Court. To call me the gatekeeper, I guess you could say that, but what Steve doesn't know is that we have meetings with social workers, psychologists, veterans, mentors, and the judges and the defense attorneys. We're all in there. Sometimes the defense attorney doesn't want their client to go in the program because it's arduous. As far as I know, any misdemeanor is eligible for that program. If you want to open it up to everybody, let me tell you, I know Steve never tried a case in our courthouse. He only passed the Virginia bar a couple of years ago, but if you'd see what goes on, we have child molesters, murderers, people who commit malicious wounding on their wives. I'm not going to put them in a diversion program. If you're violent, you're dangerous. I'm proud to say that we are expanding our court. We are in the juvenile court now with the veterans docket. We're actually taking cases from juvenile court where husband and wives have issues. So we're treating a lot of people. I have great relations with the veterans people. They told me, Steve spoke to them, they said all they did was praise me and my staff. I don't understand what he's talking about there, but it's a great program. I'm proud of it.
Thank you, Mr. Morrogh. If I may just have one follow-up based on your response. You indicate that you are not willing to put violent criminals in a diversionary or specialized treatment docket. Would you commit to non-violent felons for specialized treatment dockets?
Yes, and we do that. I mean, we do that. Even some cases of violence, especially in the mental health field, these people aren't really trying to be violent. They're struggling because they're scared or they're in a schizophrenic. We don't just draw the line to violence per se. I'm talking about, I take seriously my duty to keep you safe. I have some pretty good judgment, I think, and so we try to put people in the slots where they belong, but if you look at my record and the programs we have, we're helping a lot of people, felons and non-felons, to stay out of jail. That's why our jail population is so low.
Thank you, sir. In the interest of fairness, Mr. Descano, I will allow you 1 additional minute for this topic, rebuttal on this topic.
Absolutely, thank you. When Ray said he didn't know what I was talking about, I'll tell you what I'm talking about, because I've heard it from the people who run the program and for the defense attorneys all over that courthouse, is that it is an arduous process. And to get people into the process, you have to incentivize them. You have to offer them something for a reason why it's not going to be easy for them. It's easier for them to just take the plea and create that cycle of recidivism over and over again. And the way that you do that is you actually offer incentives that are better than the deals that you would get. Because right now they're just offering the same deal. Nobody's going to go through that program, and that's why the incentive, or that's why the program is so low. What we need to do is we not only need to be getting people into these programs, we need to be getting them into this program and putting them back out on the other end without the type of criminal record that is going to limit their lives, keep them from getting an apartment, keep them from getting school loans, keep them from getting jobs. Because when we talk about things like mass incarceration and the criminal justice system, it's more than just the number of people in jail, it's how lives are limited from falling into that system.
Thank you. Our next topic relates to substance abuse and mental health, and posed first to Mr. Morrogh. 2/3 of likely Virginia voters think that the criminal justice system is failing in how it treats people with mental illness and those addicted to drugs. Similarly, 9 out of 10 voters support rehabilitative treatment rather than incarceration. Mr. Morrogh, what, if any, measures are in place in your office to ensure a person's mental health and/or substance abuse treatment needs are adequately considered when prosecuting a case?
Thank you, Vanessa. The first thing that happens when someone is brought into custody on a crime is after they go through the magistrate process, is they're interviewed by the pretrial services program, which is an arm of the court. That group collects information about the defendant, mental health, substance abuse information. And if they have a substance abuse problem or a mental health problem, the supervised release portion of that program takes over. We work closely with them. We meet with them constantly. We're always looking for people in jail who don't belong there. They review the case the day after the person is brought in, then they go back 3 days later. If the person's still in jail, they make sure he has an attorney. They might contact us. If they're still in jail in 2 weeks, they go back again. We try to get treatment for them. We're doing everything we can, really. I agree that there are many, many people who don't belong in jail. We can't arrest our way out of the drug problem, and mental health is an illness. Drug addiction is a disease. I see that. I work hard to work with those people.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Descano, I'm adjusting slightly for the manner in which the question was posed to Mr. Morrogh. Can you say, if you are elected, how will you ensure a person's mental health and or substance abuse treatment needs are given just consideration in the prosecution of his case?
That's a great question, because it's very, very important. And this is something that I've thought is important for a long time. You know, I know that Rail talks about not being able to prosecute our way out of this drug and mental health crisis. But as late as 2014, he was in DC fighting against the Obama administration's plan to ratchet down the drug war and talking about how we learned our lesson in the 80s, and that's what we should be doing. These reforms, we're only having this conversation because we're running out of money. What we need to do is we need to make sure, what I want to do is I want to work with stakeholders so that when we have somebody with a substance abuse problem, we are able to get them into a program before pre-conviction. Because right now our drug court is only post-conviction while they're on probation. Because again, the important thing is not only that they get clean, not only that they're able to get to have their addiction under control, but particularly that they're able to, while their addiction's under control, they're not going to have their lives lived when they come out on the other side.
Thank you, sir. Our next question relates to pretrial detention and bond and will be first posed to Mr. Descano. Nearly half of the people in Virginia jails are awaiting trial and have not yet been convicted of a crime. Some are held on minor or nonviolent offenses due to an inability to make a secured bond. These practices disproportionately affect people of color, women, and the poor. Will you commit to adopting a policy in your office of requesting pretrial detention only for defendants that pose a threat to public safety?
I absolutely make that pledge as part of one of the big planks of my campaign. You know, because that's a huge problem in Fairfax County. Right now, 45.9% of the people who are eligible for pretrial release have cash bond attached to their release. And this isn't a safety issue, because if you're eligible for cash bond, the judge has already made a determination that you are not dangerous and you are not a flight risk. All this does is punish poor people simply for being poor. And all that does is increase the opportunity that they'll lose their job, they'll lose their apartment, they'll lose their kid, and we know that recidivism rates will go up years down the road if you've been held for jail because you can't afford to pay even for a couple of days. What we need to solve this problem is we need leaders who won't punt this ball to the legislature. We need somebody who's not going to tinker around the edges and say, well, I'm going to try to ask for affordable cash bail. No, no, no. We need real leadership here. I make that pledge that I will instruct my prosecutors to not ask for cash bond for anybody who is eligible for release. That's the pledge I make. I make it today, I make it every day. Day one, that's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Morrogh, as the incumbent, I will adjust your question slightly. I would ask you to state your office's policy regarding when to request pretrial detention and secured bonds and your rationale.
Okay. Thank you, Vanessa. First of all, I want to say, I'm going to talk a little quickly because this is a complex issue that my opponent is oversimplifying. I'm sure it's an accident, but I don't set bail. The magistrate sets bail by statute. Then the judge can review it, and the judge higher than that can review it. I've never asked for a cash bail in 35 years. You might have read in the paper recently, one of our judges, Judge Bernhardt, is not putting cash bails on anybody. He can do that. He's a judge. He commented recently that he's never seen a Fairfax prosecutor ask for a cash bail. I don't think private entities should be involved in the criminal justice system, either private prisons or bond. It should be up to the government because people are helpless when they're held in jail. We need government accountability on that, not private. The only bonds we ask for, not ask for, but we ask people to be held is what we do. We don't ask for cash. Hold them or not. We ask to hold violent people who are a threat, but we also ask sometimes to hold people who continually fail to appear because people rip off the elderly to the tune of $34 billion. and they know if they don't show up, no case.
I'd like to just respond to that if I may, if you'll allow me as the moderator.
I believe.
Timer's going, 57 seconds.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I encourage you to read that Washington Post article about the judge who doesn't set cash bond. Because if you read down a couple paragraphs into it, you'll see a quote from my opponent here saying, calling cash bail a very important part of the criminal justice system. And we wouldn't have faith in the criminal justice system if we got away with it. And then if you would have listened to I see a lot of people here that were at a Young Dems forum in September, where he talked about how he doesn't ask his prosecutors to set an affordable bond, he asks them to set affordable bond, but still estimates that 30% of the people that come into the system are staying there because they can't afford the bond that they get. You know, I think it's really convenient that he'll sit up here and say, well, I've never asked for cash bond. It's not about what you ask for, it's about what your prosecutors do. And that's the job of the Commonwealth's attorney. Granted, the Commonwealth's attorney should not be in these cash bond hearings. That's not the job. But the job is leadership and making sure that the people in his office do the right thing.
Thank you. In the interest of preserving the fairness of this debate, Mr. Descano has had 2 minutes to address this topic. I will allot Mr. Morrogh 1 additional minute.
Thank you, Vanessa. Again, this is a complex issue. It's hard to get it out in 60 seconds. We don't ask for a cash bond. A lot of times defense attorneys ask for a cash bond. The public defender, just in a case recently, say my chief deputy out there asked for a cash bond because they don't want to have drug testing or they don't want to be monitored in some way. So as long as there is cash bail, it needs to be fair. So what I instructed my assistants is if an attorney comes to you and says, my client's in jail and can't afford a cash bail on some kind of a minor case, ask the judge to reduce it or put him on a PR or put him on SRP. That's why the jail population is so low. I'm working hard to do just what he says. And it's working. It's working. The proof is in the pudding. Look at the numbers. They're down. Again, he says he's going to do away with cash bail. He can't. There's a separation of powers in this country. I don't punt to the legislature. First thing I do by taking an office is I raise my hand and take an oath to follow the law. The General Assembly makes the laws. You elect those folks. It's their job.
Thank you, sir. Our next topic relates to the felony larceny threshold and will be first posed to Mr. Morrogh. Virginia's felony larceny threshold is still one of the lowest in the nation at just $500. That means that a person can be convicted of a felony for stealing most new model cell phones. The effects of felony convictions can affect many aspects of an individual's life, such as access to public housing, financial aid, and future employment. If elected, would you commit to prosecuting larceny of less than $1,500 routinely as misdemeanors? And will you commit to advocate in the General Assembly to raise the threshold?
Thank you, Vanessa. As I said earlier, I testified in 2002 that it should be at least $750. That was at a request of Senator Chet Peterson, who's a leader of criminal justice reform. I think it should be at least $1,500, maybe higher. I want you to know we have a diversion program for misdemeanor larcenies where you don't get a conviction, you get community service. But with respect to the felonies, I agree, but there are cases that stand out. There's always outliers. You have people who who have committed 5 prior larcenies. They don't want a 3-time conviction. Sometimes they will agree to take a reasonable sentence on a case. There are people who steal a lot, affect the quality of life. We've got to watch out for them. But I tell our assistants to use discretion. That's our job as a prosecutor. You know, when we say, we pick a random number and say we'll never prosecute over this amount or tell a magistrate not to charge, that's outside the scope of my authority, and it's a dangerous precedent for prosecutors who will not follow the law.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Descano, same question.
Thank you, and the answer to that question is yes, I will commit to that. Because the prosecutorial discretion is invested in me as the elected Commonwealth's attorney, and the line attorneys would get the amount that I gave them. And one of the things I would tell them is do not prosecute these as felonies if they're under $1,500. Because I'm not going to ruin somebody's life, get them out of housing, financial aid, employment, simply for stealing an iPhone. And not only will I do that in court, but I will advocate for that. Because, you know, I go around and I talk to a lot of legislators in Fairfax County, and they tell me they need a partner right? The amount of people, I gotta be honest with you, the amount of people that tell me that they don't know you, Ray, is more than the amount of people that tell me they have a working relationship. They tell me they want a prosecutor to advocate, to get this out into the ether, to help them with criminal justice reform. I plan to do that, and on one of the issues that I pledge to do that on is helping and advocating to get the larceny threshold over $1,500, because studies have shown that if you do that, there is no increase in property crime, but it's the right thing to do, and we're saving lives.
Thank you, sir. Our next question relates to asset forfeiture and is posed first to Mr. Descano. Civil asset forfeiture is the process by which the government files suit requesting an accused be required to forfeit money and/or property if the government can prove that their assets are the result of a criminal enterprise. Last year, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office received $138,000 from civil asset forfeitures, which is the second highest amount in the Commonwealth of Virginia. If elected, would you agree to refrain from initiating a civil forfeiture proceeding until an accused has actually been convicted of a crime?
That's a great question, because I think that we all recognize how powerful that this position is, and the possibility of overreach in our criminal justice system. So I only feel comfortable with asset forfeiture when it's criminal asset forfeiture, because I would hate to think, and I know that a lot of people in this room would hate to think, that your property is taken from you before you even committed a crime, or before you've been convicted of committing a crime. You know, as a prosecutor, as somebody who really, really values the due process of law, the idea that you really are innocent until proven guilty, I really do have a lot of problems with the idea that we take property, legalized theft from people before they've been proven anything to do wrong. And that system incentivizes law enforcement to build budgets based on the mass of people who have not committed a crime.
Thank you, Steve. I would say that our forfeitures are high because we are the biggest jurisdiction in the state. We decline a lot of forfeitures. Steve didn't really say whether or not he would proceed with forfeiture cases, but you know, it's something that I think we need to be very cautious about. I cannot say, honestly, that I would never engage in forfeiture process. There are cases, people bring lots of drugs up, 95. There's money in the trunk, there's cocaine all over it, no one's talking. We're trying to stop this stuff. You know, I have to see the autopsies every week of everyone who dies of an overdose in this county. And one way to hit these drug cartels and whatnot is to hit them in the pocketbook if we can't, you know, make a criminal case. And it's hard to make a criminal case, as it should be. A lot of those forfeitures are not contested because people don't want to admit that it's either their car or they had access to the drugs and money. So I do it as fairly as possible. I've gotten money back for lots of people that I think was fair for them to take.
Thank you, sir. Our next question relates to discovery reform and is posed first to Mr. Morrogh.
Thank you, Vanessa. I was a defense attorney before I was a prosecutor. Oh, it's not.
That's okay.
It is the lightning round, so I'm amped up.
Okay, so discovery is the process that governs what information opposing parties must share. Access to information about the substance of an allegation is critical to the preparation of one's defense. Do you believe that an accused should have access to a police narrative and witness statements for both misdemeanors and felonies? Why or why not? And will you commit to providing this information prior to the date of trial at the district court level?
Yes, I believe in complete disclosure. As I said earlier, when I first took office in 2007, I completely opened the discovery process. I don't want you to think I give out your social security numbers and everything to defendants. We do redact that kind of information, but we give everything because it's the fair thing to do, because we don't want people to be wrongfully convicted. I've told my assistants, just be totally cooperative with the defense, give them everything. Misdemeanors is a little tricky We run like 7 misdemeanor courts a day, not counting juvenile, and there's thousands of those cases. We don't get any prep time on them, so we need more people if we're going to, deliver the materials early. We just need more people. I'm for it, and it'd be great with me if the police would do it, if you could convince them to turn the stuff over. But we can work on that. I'm all for it. I tell my assistants, let the attorneys see the file in general district court. If they have an issue with any of the discovery, ask for a continuance. It would be smoother to do it in advance. I've got 34 people, and we get 54,000 jailable cases came through our court last year.
Yeah, I think giving everything over is important. I'm from the federal system, that's what we did as a matter of course. It's fair, it allows people to build a defense, which means that there's a less likelihood that somebody who is innocent is going to be convicted. That is what justice is all about, making sure that we don't convict innocent people. And that's what we want to do. I think I'm confounded, and I'll be honest with you. You talked about the discovery reform, open file discovery in your office. But a few months ago in the Virginia Lawyers Weekly article, you were quoted as talking about how you don't want to give police reports to individuals because you worry that you're not going to be able to keep people safe. And that doesn't make any sense. I mean, every other state almost does it. People in Virginia aren't unnecessarily retributive. And also when you were the president of the Virginia Commonwealth Attorneys Association, your organization fought against open file discovery reform. So we have this mismatch of what the history is here on this issue. All right, great. Thanks, Tiffany.
Our next topic relates to Brady material and will be first posed to Mr. Descano. Mr. Descano, Brady material is the term commonly used to refer to a prosecutor's requirement to provide an accused with exculpatory evidence, impeachment evidence for any of his witnesses, and mitigating information for the defendant. It is imperative that a defendant have access to this material in a timely manner before trial. What system would you implement to ensure the adequate and consistent dissemination of Brady material if collected?
Thank you, that's a great question. Because Brady material is the most important material, right? That is the most valuable piece of information for individuals who to build their own defense and possibly show that, hey, I'm the wrong person here. And it's so important to me, as a matter of fact, that I think I quote the Brady case 2 or 3 times on my website. It's that important. And the reason for having an open file discovery where everything is copied and handed over as early as possible, it means that it takes the decision out of the prosecutor's hands, right? Because typically what can happen is the prosecutor goes through and he looks and he makes a decision of, oh, this may be Brady, this may not be Brady, forget that. We're not messing around with that stuff. We do real open file discovery where everything is copied and handed over as soon as possible. That guarantees that every single piece of Brady material will be handed over. The other thing I want to take advantage of that I hear is a problem is prosecutors waiting to engage with their victims or their witnesses to avoid creating more Brady material. And that's a subtly pervasive issue that I will take care of as well.
Thank you. So, Mr. Morrogh, I will adjust the question slightly for you as the incumbent. Can you state what are the safeguards that are currently in place in your office that ensure that Brady material is being adequately and consistently provided?
Well, we train on it constantly. It is, as Steve says, a critical aspect of what we do because, after all, my job is not to get convictions. It's to see that justice is done. And that means being fair to every defendant and every defense attorney. So, as I said, we do give police reports. My comments in the Lawyers Weekly from a couple of years ago had to do with a proposal by the Supreme Court that would have not allowed us to redact any information from the reports other than social security numbers. And we deal with people whose kids have been molested or women who've been raped. Sometimes there are things that are said have nothing to do with the case, personal things about their spouse or other things. And I don't think victims deserve to have that spread across the court records. I try to protect them. But Brady, I'm deadly serious about disclosing it. We make discs for our attorneys. We don't make them come copy it like a lot of offices. We print it out for them. We put it on disc. We help them. Ask most of the lawyers. I mean, they don't have any problem with my office. Never have on that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Related to this topic, there is a secondary question that I would like to pose to each of you for 30 seconds apiece. What action would you take if you learn that an assistant Commonwealth attorney in your office violated his obligations under Brady and the Virginia Rules of Professional Conduct? I'll start with you, Mr. Morrogh.
You know, that's a good question and a difficult one. I mean, I suppose the answer is, that you want to hear is, I would fire that person immediately. But having experience in the system, I've seen cases in my own office and otherwise where people are so overloaded with information that they miss something and it's not intentional. That can happen. No system is perfect. You know, you go in for surgery, you don't know what's going to happen. We try our best. People make mistakes. I would take into account all the factors, any willfulness involved, the experience of the person, and just like a criminal defendant, make a just decision.
Thank you. Mr. Descano, same question.
Great, thank you. I don't need 30 seconds. That person's gone. That's the answer.
Thank you. Our next topic relates to, diversity, and I'll begin with Mr. Descano. Do you believe that diversity in hiring is important, and what measures would you put in place to ensure the composition of your office is reflective of the community that it serves?
That's a great question, because diversity in hiring is incredibly important. You know, no matter how, I guess, woke somebody is, anybody in this position, you are limited to how you see the world and your experiences and who you are. And to fully flesh out a 360 view of the world, we need people of other backgrounds. And we need people, not only for that reason to just, you know, check a box or whatever, but to have people with similar backgrounds and lived experiences to our wonderfully diverse community in Fairfax County, to go out and build bridges to these communities, to come back and take that information so we can build policies and procedures that are reflective and that are reactive to what each individual community needs. So what I would do in hiring is I would make it a point to hire diversity, to look outside of the traditional hiring models, to focus on going around to different law schools and different law groups and trying to get individuals who may not otherwise have been recruited into these positions.
Thank you, Steve.
So, Mr. Morrogh, as the incumbent, your question should be adjusted slightly. Can you state, I guess, first your position on whether you believe diversity in hiring is important, and what steps have you taken in your office if you believe that your office is diverse enough?
Thank you, Vanessa. Yes, I think diversity is critical in every part of our lives. I think it's what makes our country great, is having people from all over the world and of all different races and creeds. We take it seriously. I think our office is, Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, about 23% minority. We recruit from minority schools. We actively look for people of color because I think it makes the system better when the offices, the government offices that are so important, reflect the community they serve. So we work hard at that. I have a shadow program. We go to schools. We target underrepresented minorities. I'm proud to say I have a young Hispanic man who just got into law school, who went through that program. He said, "You're the one who made me want to be a lawyer." I wrote a lot of letters for him. He's gotten into law school. We have another young man, African-American young man, wonderful young man, came in, shadowed. He wants to be a lawyer. He's on his way. The deputy and I are writing letters for him. I think it's so important to our country and my office.
Thank you, sir. That concludes my questions for the in-depth response portion of our forum. I next have a set of lightning round questions that I ask each candidate answer simply with a yes or no or one sentence ordinance. I'll begin with Mr. Descano.
Sorry.
Mr. Descano, do you support the implementation of body-worn cameras for every member of the police department and patrol division?
Yes, and I've advocated for that for years.
Mr. Morrogh, same question.
Yes, same answer.
All right, Mr. Morrogh, a rogue group of the Virginia General Assembly suggests that jurisdictions hire one new Commonwealth attorney for every 75 body-worn cameras in use. Do you perceive the management of camera footage in your office to be so cumbersome that this is necessary?
Additional people are needed to implement the program, yes. Virginia bar has ruled prosecutors have to view every hour of the footage. That's going to take a lot of time, but I'm all for it.
We need the resources to do it right, but that shouldn't stop us from doing it. We should find a way.
Mr. Descano, if elected, would you commit to refer investigation of any county law enforcement officer involved in a shooting, death, or alleged misconduct inside of Fairfax County to another prosecutor or the Attorney General's office for review?
One sentence.
One sentence.
Oh my God. That's why I'm trying to figure out one sentence. No, because we've been elected to do a job, leadership is doing that job, and building the trust in the community that we're doing the job the right way is part of the job.
Thank you. Mr. Morrogh, same question, one sentence.
No, because somebody has to be responsible for it, and it's hard to, you can't find other prosecutors to do it, but I think every case should be reviewed by federal authorities to make sure the state is in the right.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Morrogh, do you support decriminalizing simple possession of marijuana by making it finable rather than a jailable offense?
Yes, I think that personally marijuana should be a civil infraction and not a criminal offense, although we don't incarcerate people for marijuana, they get a deferred disposition, and I'm not recommending the drug, but I just think it should be a civil infraction, not a crime.
Thank you. Yes, and that's why I will never prosecute a simple possession of marijuana case, because even the deferred disposition gives somebody a non-expungible record that will follow them for the rest of their life.
Thank you. Mr. Descano, will you commit to decline the prosecution of simple possession of marijuana under less than contaminants?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Morrogh, same question.
I can't do that because I take an oath to enforce the law. We do everything we can to work those cases out in favor of the defendants, but it's malfeasance to tell the police not to charge a case. I just can't do it ethically.
Thank you. Mr. Morrogh, each year approximately 3,000 people are arrested here for drunken public. The ACLU People Power Fairfax is working to implement a system whereby these individuals can be diverted to detox instead of arrested and transported to the adult detention center. Will you support this effort publicly and work to achieve its implementation within 1 year?
Absolutely, and I supported a similar program. It must be 20 years ago now. We got it going, but somehow it ran out of funds. I think that'd be a great program. A lot of people suffer from alcohol addiction, and again, the jail is not the place for them. Not at all.
Mr. Descano, same question.
The answer is yes, I would support that, because the goal here is to keep as many people out of the criminal justice system as possible and get them the help that they need to keep them from falling into it, and that type of program is precisely something that we should be supporting and implementing.
Thank you. Mr. Descano, would you support creating a diversion program for those accused of driving under the influence first offense? One sentence.
My goodness, you're strict. I think that would have to be, that issue would have to be flushed out a little bit more. I don't think you could do a blanket statement because there are different BAC levels that would indicate different issues.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Morrogh, same question.
I tend to agree, so I guess my answer is no.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, I think that concludes our lightning round. I believe that we have a list of questions that have been submitted by the audience. Maybe if we could take, do we have 5 minutes to get those organized? We'll give you guys 5 minutes to regroup.